Hello, I recently got the Osmo Action, and we're gonna do a little review and some tips and tricks. Stay with me. So the Osmo Action, it's my first action camera, except for one camera that I had. It was a Chinese camera. It was like $60. I don't have any GoPros, so I don't have very many accessories. However, I do have one accessory that hooked to the Osmo and allow me to put it on a tripod. And then I use like a little bendy tripod to use it. When the GoPro Hero 7 came out, I really wanted it. The stabilization that it showed in videos was amazing. The hyperlapse, I saw different people using, I thought was really cool. I just really couldn't justify buying it. I didn't really need it. I'm wanting to grow and I want to make films, but I couldn't see how that would fit into the way I was doing filmmaking. But this camera, because of the front-facing camera, kind of allows me to use it more as a vlogging camera, and also for something that my son Dennis can use. He can use it for vlogging, so it has more cases, more uses. And now that I have it, I'm very excited about it. The stabilization, the rock steady that's in the Osmo is amazing. Again, I don't have the Hero, the GoPro Hero 7, which it also looked really cool. It's very neat. I might see videos with that and it looks very good. But there are some really neat things that I like about this and how it can fit into my life. The way I'm going to utilize it mostly would be using it when I don't want to carry my DSLR. I use the SL2, a Canon SL2, which is just a cheap, it's not really cheap, but a less expensive DSLR camera that still takes changeable lenses. It does have a CMOS sensor, so it's not a full frame. But it's still big enough that it's clunky when you take it around. So having something small like the Osmo Action allows it to come a lot more places. It fits in my pocket. I'm able to pull it out and get very good video because it does shoot in 4K. Again, today, most people watch videos on their phones. And I've seen in many videos demonstrated that most people can't even tell the difference between 4K and like 720. Often when I'm watching YouTube on my phone, the resolution is really only at 360p because of data. So there's 100 different videos kind of going through the specs and the different things that are part of this camera. But I do just want to give a quick rundown of the settings. Of course, on the top, there is a power button, a record button, and there is a quick setting button on the side. When you hit the power button on, it comes on, you have a touch screen on the back. If you swipe down from the top, it reveals a couple different settings. You have a picture of like a head, which goes into customizing. You have the bright, you can lock the camera, you have settings, you can rotate the buttons. And right now I have it on auto, but you can put it on up or down for it to stay there. You have a setting for pulling focus, for voice commands, and then there's a little button that changes your front-facing camera, excuse me, your front-facing screen from like a square to the 9:16. If you swipe from the right, you get settings for your camera. There's auto or manual. In auto, which is nice, you can set your max ISO. So if you're shooting in dark, that it won't go up too high. If you swipe back, if you swipe up, this is where you get to change your resolution and your frames per second, and where you also turn on and off rock steady. If you swipe from the left, you get to see the different videos that you've taken and watch them from there. As I said before, the way I think I'm going to utilize the camera is doing things quickly. And because of that, it has a nice feature called Snapshot. And the way Snapshot is, no matter what setting you're in, if you hit the record button, it will start recording from a default settings. So even from the off position, if I hit the record button, it will boot up and start recording with this default setting. I made a mistake when I first started using this camera, is that when the screens time out, so if you have it like in a low setting, if I had the screens timing out after 1 minute, say I went in and I set it up to be at 4K, 30 frames per second, but then the screens would go black, if I hit the record button, it would go back to that quick setting, and which was messing me up because I had mine set on a manual mode, which then was making me overexpose everything because I don't yet have any ND filters to shoot in bright light, so I needed to be able to shoot in automatic mode. So to set that up, you first need to do some customization. And that's by making some profiles, some custom profiles that uses the quick settings button that's on the side. When you do that, you gotta decide what you're gonna use. For me, I've decided to use 2.7K at 48 frames per second. And the reason I did that is that it's bigger than 1080p, which is what I normally do my videos in. So I can zoom in and zoom out, but it's not full size at 4K, so that it's very large video size. So it does keep it a little bit smaller. The reason I picked 48 frames per second is because I normally edit my videos in a 24 frames per second timeline. And since that's divisible evenly by 2, by putting that 48 in a 24 frames per second timeline and playing it at normal speed, you don't get any choppiness because it just basically plays every other frame and it works out. But I'm still able to slow it down to 50% speed. So I still can use some slow-mo at 50% speed and it works out very well. So I do have quick settings set for 2.7K at 48 frames per second, and I also have a 4K at 48 frames per second. So the way you would do that is you swipe up, you set up your settings, make sure rock steady is on, swipe down, and then you hit the little person icon and you're able to click a number. There's a plus sign with a number and that will assign your quick setting. Once you have the settings you're set up, you can then go to your settings, which again, swipe down, hit the settings on the far right corner, go to snapshot, and then you're able to pick the setting you want to be there. So I have mine at 2.7, 48 frames per second. And that way it will always go that. And that gives me the best, even if I mess it up, I know that that's what it's gonna film at, or if I'm in a hurry, that's what it will film at. And then the other setting that I do have on that you may want to have is actually a de-warp. So as I swipe from the right side and I put the camera, you can actually hit de-warp and you can turn that on and off. So that's a setting that you may want to do. So that way you won't have that kind of fisheye look. So using this camera in the real world, I just wanted to, the biggest mistake that I notice I'm making is having the screens time out and getting the settings messed up. So if I change the settings, I hit record and it overexposed because it wasn't the way I did it. I'm also learning from other people doing YouTube reviews. A lot of people would accidentally turn rock steady off. And you can verify that rock steady is on when you look at the back of the screen. It actually puts an RS at the top. That's how you know that it's on. So if you're about to start filming, you know it's on from the settings menu. You swipe up and then if it's blue. If it's not blue, it's off. So the way to get to your front facing screen is to just hold the QS button down and then it will swap. Or you can tap the back screen with 2 fingers twice, but that doesn't work very well for me. So I always just push and hold the QS button, the quick settings button, and it switches back and forth. The other thing that I did besides my 2 video settings is I also set up 2 time lapses. So you have quite a few options in time lapse, but with the QS button, I set up a 2.7K 48 frames per second, a 4K 48 frames a second, then a time lapse with a picture in 2.7K every 1 second, and a time lapse with a picture every 3 seconds, also in 2.7K. So once you get those profiles set up, you do need to enable them in your settings menu. So swiping down, hit settings, and then you can go to quick switch, and then you see all the options you have. So there's check marks on the right side, and whatever you choose will show up with the quick settings button. If you don't select them, you can't get into those settings, however. And that's how I want to do it. So quick and easy usage. And I'm gonna put some footage in, and so you can kind of see how it's working in the different scenarios. In my real world scenario, it works real easy. I do like the front facing screen. It makes vlogging a little easier. With that, I would highly recommend this camera. I think it's very functional. I think it is handy to use and easy to use. But it's something that would probably round out a repertoire, but it's not something that's necessary for it. I mean, unless you're really into action sports or skateboarding or biking and you want to be able to attach it on there, or if you want to get different types of shots from like moving cars or in weird positions, it is really handy, but it still is pretty pricey up there. So, you know, if you're gonna get your first camera and you want to do it, I'd recommend moving to a DSLR where you're able to buy additional lenses in the long run. That will give you more flexibility, be able to use it in more places. There's no way I can shoot pictures or do anything with this like at church which I do now. So with that, just thanks for stopping by and watching. God bless you.